Hello learners, in the previous video we discussed about police power doctrine. So in this video we will discuss about how the tribunals have applied police power doctrine in ISTS cases. At least we will look at 3 such cases. If we look at Saluka versus Czech Republic, in this case we can see that the tribunal has applied police power doctrine and it has explicitly stated so that it has applied police power doctrine. Firstly, what Saluka tribunal did was it examined the regulatory measure and then it concluded that the measure had the effect of eviscerating the investment. So actually what it did was, first it found that there was expropriation and then it proceeded to apply the police power doctrine. So later on what Saluka tribunal stated was, Saluka tribunal explicitly mentioned that it was accepted or it is established in international law that the states need not pay compensation for taking a regulatory measure in the normal exercise of its regulatory powers as long as it is not discriminatory. So then it even said that such sort of an exercise of power is something called as police powers as well. So we can find, if we do a Control F search in Saluka's award, we will find the phrase police power mentioned there. If we also, what Saluka tribunal did was, first it found that there was expropriation and then sort of applied an exception mechanism. That is where it stated that this, because of the police power, it is not compensable. Now, if we come to the other case, Methanex case, Methanex tribunal did not explicitly use the term police powers. Rather, the Methanex tribunal stated that it was a matter of general international law that a non-discriminatory measure taken for a public purpose and in accordance with due process, even if it has an adverse effect on foreign investment, cannot be deemed as expropriatory or compensable. So now we say that without explicitly using the terms police power, essentially the Methanex tribunal is also talking about police power doctrine. This is just one part of the award. This was joined by another part, another paragraph which stated that unless specific commitments have been given to the investor stating that such a regulation would not be taken. So basically we can say a police power approach with a caveat or a disclaimer. Right, if the state has given specific commitment, then in that case it may not be considered as non-compensable, some compensation had to be paid. Now this was the approach of Methanex tribunal. So this decision of Methanex tribunal was something that was celebrated by many, including environmentalists and others, and they said that at least the state's right to regulate, especially in case of protecting the environment, is something that is now being considered in ISTS as well. So in case of a police power doctrine, we do see that excessive weightage, I'm calling it excessive, right, or heavy reliance is placed on the fact of the reason behind the measure or the purpose of that measure, and then when that is sufficiently established, then in that case the tribunal may even say that no compensation need to be paid to the investor. Now what we see here is there is clearly a difference in the approach of Saluka tribunal and Methanex tribunal. Saluka tribunal first found the measure to be expropriatory and then applied police power doctrine to arrive at a conclusion that compensation need not be paid. But if you look at Methanex tribunal, there an examination of the question itself is conducted from the perspective of police power doctrine. If we look at the third and the final case for today's discussion, Chemtura versus Canada. So in this case, the tribunal arrived at the decision saying that there is no expropriation because there is no substantial deprivation, but it still went ahead and spelled out the police powers that the Canada possessed in this case. So here what Chemtura tribunal stated was that with the increasing research on the adverse effect of lindane on human health and the environment, PMRAs, Canada's agency's measure was something that is a valid exercise of state's police power. So even in Chemtara, we can say that the police power is explicitly mentioned. So basically, some tribunals do explicitly mention the term police powers, but some tribunals do not explicitly mention the phrase police powers, but still decides a question of expropriation by applying the idea of police power, the theory behind the police power doctrine, right. So what is the best approach? We've seen two different approaches. If you take Saluka's approach is also little problematic in the sense that such an approach where you hold a measure to be expropriatory and then you are applying a general exception kind of application, it may not be optimal from the perspective of a host state. But if you take a Methanex approach wherein the examination itself is conducted from the perspective of police power doctrine, it may not be optimal from the perspective of the investor. So some scholars do state that why can't the tribunal go beyond the black and white application of police power and shift to a proportionality test wherein the effect of the measure on the foreign investment will also be considered, as well as the purpose for which the regulatory measure was enacted. So such a proportionality test is something that we can see was done in TechMed case. So in the next video, we will look at how the TechMed tribunal had applied a proportionality test in order to answer this question if the regulatory measure is expropriatory or not.